If you're a parent that often hides or suppresses your emotions from your child with the idea of protecting them from your emotions, then you might want to listen to this video. Hi, my name is Cindy Hovington. I have a PhD in neuroscience. I'm a mom of 3 from Montreal, Canada, and my specialty is emotion regulation skills. And so what I'd like to do today is share an article that I found for you that can help you understand why it is important for us as parents to not suppress our emotions. Doesn't mean that it's easy and that we can do it tomorrow, but at least understanding the science behind it may help you build your self-awareness and start practicing some tools that will help you regulate your emotions a little better in front of your kids. And so this article is called Not in Front of the Kids: Effects of Parental Suppression on Socialization Behaviors During Cooperative Parent-Child Interactions. This is a 2019 article from the Journal of Emotion, and I'll put the link in the show notes of this episode. And if you are new to this YouTube channel, welcome. You can click the subscribe button if you want to receive these updates. There's also updates on or about the Reflective Parenting Club. What I want to do is really share science with parents, specifically to help them learn how to regulate their emotions and help them model this for their kids. And so, as I said before, I think that most of us that suppress our emotions normally do this because we want to protect our children. Many of us. But there might be some of us that do this because maybe we didn't learn how to regulate our emotions growing up, or maybe we were taught to suppress our emotions growing up, telling us, or somebody was telling us, that this is how we, seemed stronger. And so I want us really today to take a deep dive into this study to understand things a little bit more. So first, suppression is an emotion regulation strategy that involves the inhibition of emotional expression. And so your body or your brain is still experiencing the emotion, but you are consciously suppressing it and not allowing it to come out. And though you might think that this is a good thing, but there's lots of research around how suppressing our emotions has a negative impact, not just on us, physiologically, but socially and cognitively. Cognitively is our, capacity that we have, our brain capacity and our cognitive capacity. It takes a lot of energy for us to suppress an emotion. It takes a lot for us to do that. And so because it does take a lot of energy, it's very consuming and taxing on the brain. And that is why some studies have also shown that those who suppress often have struggles with memory, because especially in the emotion or the emotional situation that you were in, because suppressing takes so much energy, you are not using the capacities that you need and the cognitive skills that you need to remember parts of this conversation because you are suppressing. And so it's really important for us to remember this particular piece. So although, you're not really putting the emotion out there and having this really big reaction, there are negative consequences to suppressing. So we have to remind ourselves of that. The other thing that studies have found is that people who tend to suppress more also have higher levels of stress. Again, because you are internalizing, you are not giving or providing yourself some sort of outlet to let go of these emotions and this stress. And so there's a direct correlation between how much stress you are bottling up and keeping in your body and how often you are suppressing your emotions. And so I've worked with many parents that, especially dads, that tend to suppress a lot. And then what happens is that it's almost like all of this bottled up anger. And it's not just dads that suppress, there are moms as well. And so it's really important for us to remember that it's just more taxing on our cognitive system in order when we do suppress emotions. Suppressing our emotions hasn't really been studied a lot when it comes to the relationship between a parent and a child, but it has been studied between two adults. And what they found is that when a person tends to suppress their emotions, they tend to be less responsive or warm to the person that they are having a discussion with or conflict with. You are so busy suppressing your emotions, again, thinking about how taxing it is, that you don't have the capacity, one, to remember what is being said, like we said, but number two, to use more energy to really be attuned with the person who's in front of you and really show warmth. It takes even more energy to do that. And so relationships where one person suppresses emotions often are challenged because of this lack of warmth and sensitivity. And so if you think about the relationship that a parent has with a child, and how important research has said that warmth and sensitivity is towards your child, or not just sensitivity, but responsiveness, it reminds us how important this will be for that interaction between a parent and a child. If we're seeing lack of warmth and responsiveness between two adults, imagine what that could look like in the parent-child relationship. And that's why these researchers wanted to see what they would find when they looked at this interaction between the parent and the child. And so what we learned from these studies between two adults is that suppression doesn't only impact the person who is suppressing, but it's impacting the other person as well, because they are not feeling close and connected. There are even some studies that look at partner intimacy. There's less intimacy in a relationship when one partner tends to suppress their emotions more often. And so let's move forward to see, why is this important in a parent-child interaction in terms of the warmth and responsiveness? So first, let's look at the word responsiveness. I've spoken with lots of parents that ask me, what exactly is responsiveness and what does this mean? And so responsiveness to a child's emotional needs in particular is extremely important. And this actually helps them develop their social and emotional skills. So I've talked to parents before about this on the podcast, where we have something called the tripartite model of parental socialization. So it's this big term, just in order to kind of summarize that there are three important things that will help a child learn how to regulate their emotions in the social context and build these social emotional skills. And they have to do with what they're seeing in the home. So the first part is how a parent themselves regulate their emotions. The second one is the parenting style that a parent uses with that child. So parenting style is the parent balancing warmth and responsiveness with strict boundaries? So the boundaries have to stay, they don't leave, but it's boundaries without having harsh discipline. And so having that balance is the kind of parenting style that we want to see in the home that is conducive to a child learning how to regulate their emotions. The third one is how two adults that live in the home, if there are two adults that live in the home, how they regulate emotions together. And so these three things are what will help a child learn how to regulate their emotions. And guess what? When a child learns how to regulate their emotions, they learn how to better manage stress and behavior. And so if you are a parent listening to this saying, does my child know how to regulate their emotions? Well, think about emotions or moments when emotions such as disappointment come about, right? So you tell your child, turn the TV off, or screen time is over, and they have a huge meltdown or tantrum. That is a child showing signs that they need to learn how to regulate the emotion of disappointment. Maybe they're frustrated. Maybe they're bored. Do they know how to regulate all of these? And the only way that they're going to learn how to regulate these is if you model how to regulate these and if you scaffold for your child how to regulate these emotions, meaning building baby steps. A child will not learn overnight how to regulate emotions. Neither will we as adults. And so this is what's really hard when it comes to learning how to regulate emotions. There is no quick fix. But research has shown that the more that a parent is responsive, the better a child will learn how to regulate their emotions, because that parent is co-regulating with them. So that responsiveness piece, that falls within that tripartite model of parental socialization in terms of the parenting style that is being applied in the home. And so it is extremely critical as an element of learning how to socialize and regulate your emotions. In addition to this, so there's responsiveness, warmth, and guidance, which all have a very critical role in how you help a child learn how to regulate emotions. So, as the authors say in this article, parents must attend to demands during interactions with their child, including scaffolding, which is building those baby steps, managing their own emotions in front of their child, and helping their child manage their emotions. These are really important parts. And again, if we don't know how to regulate our emotions, we yell more often, or maybe we suppress. So it's externalizing or internalizing. If a child doesn't know how to regulate their emotions, they do the same. Externalizing looks like big emotions, tantrums, meltdowns, fits that they're really upset and they just can't control their emotions, or even internalizing. And internalizing, again, has negative consequences. There are higher risks of depression when you internalize. And so we have to be mindful of that with kids. So here's what this study did with 114 parents. They had parents do the stress test. So obviously the parent after the stress test was extremely stressed, and they had some parents express their emotions in a way that they needed to when they came back into a situation with their child. But the other half of the parents, what they did is they told them, you cannot show any emotion. So even if you're feeling really stressed right now, which they were, you can't show your child any emotions, not through your tone, your language, your facial reactions. You need to keep it all in. And so they mimicked the situation of a parent who suppresses their emotions. And what they found was actually really fascinating. So parents who tend to suppress their emotions more tend to show less warmth, tend to be less responsive, and also tend to have less positive mood around their children. And so they were, the researchers were monitoring for a period of time the interactions that these parents had with their children. And so there was a significant difference between those who were allowed to express their emotions and those who were not allowed to express their emotions with their kids. Another interesting finding was that, in general, when a parent suppresses their emotion, their child will also show less warmth and responsiveness. So, if you think back to those studies between two adults, that suppression impacts the dyad, both people in the relationship. And it's the same thing with our kids. However, the twist to this article is that the relationship between a parent who suppresses and the child's behavior and the way that they regulate their emotions and show responsiveness and warmth was not the same between moms and dads. So, when a father was less responsive, their children were not as or did not show as much of a decrease in warmth and responsiveness as when the mom was suppressing her emotions. So those children were showing less warmth and sensitivity, which means that, or not that it means, but these researchers took that as moms tend to more often express their emotions. And so in a situation where they tend to suppress, there's more of an impact on the child because they're used to seeing the emotions being expressed. And so there's more of it's more of an impact on the child when the mom is suppressing her emotions. So let's just take a moment to think about what that looks like in a situation, a real situation like us parents. What does that look like? And so if a mom is suppressing her emotions, there is going to be more of a chance of that child acting out or behaving differently or not showing on any warmth towards the mom. And so it creates a really stressful situation for both parents or both, people involved, the parent and the child. So the authors of this study conclude that although there was a bigger impact when the moms were not were suppressing their emotions, in general, the dads in the study were suppressing their emotions more. And so let's sit back for a second and think about what all of this means to us as parents. First, if you are somebody that identifies with this and you say, you know what, I am a parent that tends to suppress their emotions. My kids ask me what's going on or are you okay? And I say, I'm fine. But they can tell. So we have to remind ourselves that children can tell when something is off. Also, what we are doing is when we are suppressing our emotions and pretending we're okay, and kids know that we're not okay, we are telling our kids that it is okay not to regulate and cope with our emotions. We are also telling our kids that, or not telling our kids, but we are also not modeling what it should look like to regulate an emotion like sadness or anxiety or anger. We're pretending everything is fine and then the emotion magically disappears. How can our child learn to regulate if we didn't show them what that looks like? Maybe when you're angry, you go out for a run. Maybe when you're angry, you ask for space and you go into your room for a few minutes to take a breath. Maybe you listen to an audio and it helps you calm down. These are all emotion regulation skills that your child is learning from you. And so we have to remember the important role that we play in teaching our kids how to regulate their emotion. I also want parents listening to this to take a moment to reflect a little bit on their past. I also have, Curious Neuron also has something called the Reflective Parent Club, where I meet with parents every single week and we take time to reflect on what the week has looked like and what certain situations have occurred that are dysregulating us that we want to revisit together as a community and with me there to facilitate the reflection. And one thing that we've reflected on before is how emotions were supported when we were growing up. And so if you are somebody listening to this saying, you know what, I was raised to suppress my emotion. I was raised to hide emotions. It's really important now, if you are a parent, to think about what skills you want to kind of set or give your child. What do you want to teach them when it comes to emotion regulation skills, knowing how important it is? I also want you to take a moment as a parent to reflect on times where you have suppressed your emotions in front of your child. Was there more warmth in the interactions? Was your child more connected to you? Was their behavior changing? Take a moment the next week to think back, in terms of the past week, or just noticing moments when you suppress. What are the changes that you are seeing? What we want when it comes to our interactions with our child is we want more of those warm interactions, more of those responsive interactions. And responsive means that we are attuned with with our child and with the needs that they have. And so we can tell something is off and we know exactly what to do to support them. We don't want them to do that for us. That would be parentification, where we are kind of making or giving them the role of being our parent and co-regulating and helping us. We don't want to do that. And so the more you understand your emotions, the more you become self-aware of your own emotions, the easier it is for you to recognize and then cope with it and regulate it. But first, you need to be aware of when you are experiencing an emotion. And not all parents are aware of this. You might just feel stressed or anger. Like I said to a mom actually this morning who told me, I feel like I'm just always angry. I said, no, anger is probably the last resort for you. You might have been frustrated or disappointed before, overwhelmed or annoyed or irritated, but you didn't catch that because you were so busy in the moment and not attuned with your own needs and not self-aware of your emotions. If you can build these skills, then you can recognize those patterns, catch yourself in the moment, and then regulate before it becomes anger. And so the take home of this study that I hope all of us can take or apply to our lives is, it is okay for you to show your child your emotions. Make it developmentally appropriate if you want to talk about why, but you don't have to hide your emotions. If your child does or says something and you are annoyed or frustrated, you can let them know, but then show them what you are doing. Are you talking to them? Are you telling them what your needs are in the moment? For example, maybe there's too much noise and you tell your child, I just can't handle the noise right now. I had a really hard day at work, or I didn't sleep a lot last night and I really need you to bring the noise level down, please, just for today. It is okay for you to say that to your child. And the more that becomes part of your practice, the more emotions become part of the vocabulary being used in your home for yourself, for your kids, your partner, your everybody. And that becomes a really regulated, emotionally intelligent home. And that is what I try to help parents do. And so if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do the same thing on our podcast. And so you can go onto Apple Podcasts or Spotify and look up Curious Neuron or the Reflective Parenting Podcast. It will come up no matter which one you put in. And then you can visit our website at curiousneuron.com and come join us on Instagram at curious_neuron. I really want to help parents learn how to regulate emotions because we are seeing such a rise in parental stress and parental burnout. And through research, we know that this will have a negative impact on our kids, specifically in how they regulate their emotions and their behavior. And so if you are a parent truly struggling with your child's behavior and you've watched all the videos and listened to all the podcasts and applied all the tools in terms of how to manage your child's behavior, I want us to shift our perspective a little bit and shift the conversation towards how can we help support parents a lot more so that they can regulate their emotions and support their kids and their behavior. I'll see you next time. Bye.